Win or lose, we booze. Win or lose, I'll wear the process blue, even though this is black. But you get my drift. I need to get one in blue. And I'm going to give you some opening takes, and then we'll go into what Dave Canales and Bryce Young had to say specifically. I'm going to summarize it for you, though. Bryce Young's first half lost to the game. 2 turnovers. You can't open up the game with a fumble resulting in a walk-in touchdown and an interception that set the Cardinals up with good field position, which resulted in a field goal. Hey, everyone criticizing Evero's defense held the Cardinals to a field goal after another Bryce Young turnover early in the game. It wasn't all negative. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been horrible, honestly. If that first half was a reflection of what would have happened in the second half, look, I couldn't have been the only one who went to my refrigerator at halftime and was thinking, I wonder how Hendon Hooker or Andy Dalton would look right now. And Bryce Young, to his credit, he bounced back. I think he built some rapport with Hunter Renfrow, Bryson Tremaine even, who I'm skeptical of. He's only here because he has a relationship with the offensive coordinator. But he made a really nice catch in the first half, actually. I think he is a serviceable receiver. You need one of those because clearly the guy you drafted last year isn't. Xavier Legette was not serviceable on Sunday. But before I go into all that, there is a main glaring concern to me, which is I'm not confident Bryce Young has fixed some of the problems we saw week 1. It got better, but if you're telling me that teams can just take away T-Mac and blitz him all day, which is what the Cardinals did in the first half, and that's what's going to happen, they're going to have to resort to running the ball or getting super conservative because every time the defense blitzes and takes away his number one option, it results in a turnover. They're never going to win games. And I think the Cardinals defense, I wouldn't have been surprised if the defensive coordinator was in Old Town Scottsdale halfway through that game because their defense completely checked out. And that's a bad way of putting it. Their players played well. The Cardinals defense was actually pretty resilient personnel-wise. I know they got torched, but they ended up doing enough to win. On the last drive, they were pretty good. They were pretty good holding Bryce Young, and that really has to do with their pass rush, which stepped up. 4 guys rushing most of that drive, got home. We'll go into all that. But their defense just checked out. Like, you had a working recipe. You blitz Bryce Young, and you lock down T-Mac, and the result is a fumble walk-in for a touchdown and an interception. And they, for whatever reason, did not blitz Bryce Young at all in the second half. And Bryce Young, to his credit, took advantage of it. He took with it and ran. He was hitting Hunter Renfrow, Jatavian Sanders, just tearing apart their zone. And the numbers are really impressive. I think this is actually a situation where the numbers don't paint the true picture. And here's Dave Canales with his thoughts on Bryce Young's, 350-yard day, 3 touchdowns. Dave, what do you think of the Panthers quarterback's performance on Sunday at Arizona?
There's no moral victories like we talk about. We have to be able to play good football from snap one until the end.
Personally, I love his attitude. Like, I don't care that Bryce Young had a good fantasy day. What do I care? I could care less that he had great statistics to end the day. I think by and large, this game came down to the first half. The Panthers dug a huge hole. They would have had to have the largest comeback in franchise history to win that game, and they weren't going to do it. They weren't going to do it. They're not going to be able to win games like that this year. That's why Dave Canales says no moral victories. The team's not good enough. The team is not good enough on defense. The run game was horrid today. Chuba Hubbard had the running backs, and the Bryce Young included. The Panthers rushed for 2.7 yards per carry. So it was a horrible day running the ball. The defense, I think, played very well. Gave up only 20 points. The edge rushers, they looked really good. Didn't get a ton of sacks, but I think Pat Jones and DJ Wanham played very well. Umam mano on Jonah Williams. Comes away with the sack. Defense, again, much like that game against Jacksonville, I don't think you're getting that much more from your defense this game was even better. You forced another turnover. You limited the big plays. I think they had a couple gains of 30. The Murray scramble. McBride, I think, caught one over the middle for 31. But largely limited big plays. Kept their offense neutralized for the most part. Murray didn't have an insane day, but he managed the game. Didn't have turnovers that cost them the game. And they did enough. And Dave, again, what do you think cost the Panthers the game? Here's Coach Canales.
It's the turnovers. I think it's just, when you give the other, and I got to give them credit. I got to give the Cardinals credit for coming out and playing hard, really forcing the issue on some of those, and they had a good pressure plan. We were on our assignments, but we didn't execute the assignments. And, Bryce is in those situations, and sometimes it ain't the worst thing if you're in that situation to take a sack. I also know he makes some magical plays. I also know that he does find ways to find guys down the field, and that's part of his game. But, it's all of us. It's the mistakes that we have to continue to clean up.
I love how he wastes absolutely no time. Dave, there's a lot wrong in the world right now. What's the main problem in your eyes?
It's the turnovers.
It's like, Dave, you're rolling around in bed. It's 3 a.m. You haven't been able to sleep. What's on your mind?
It's the turnovers.
Dave, when you get criticism for, maybe the play calls, or maybe the quarterback even goes, the play calls aren't that great. We're going to go into Bryce Young's quote. What's on your mind when the quarterback complains about the play calls? When you're in the room with David Tepper, what do you say is the problem with the Carolina Panthers?
It's the turnovers.
I'm not trolling. I promise I'm not. But look, that's how he feels. I, to be honest, feel the same way. You give up 10 easy points off turnovers early. You dig a hole. And I think Bryce Young, again, I keep giving him credit. I'm not going to give him as much credit as some people, though. Some people are acting like Bryce Young is completely back. There's no reason to be concerned. He got completely emasculated on that interception. I watched the playback because I watched it during the game, and then I go, I need to see that again because what happened? I couldn't process it. Watch that play. Watch the Bryce Young interception. So they show blitz. They show like everyone's coming. And it was an amazing play by Zaven Collins. So you have 3 guys outside for the Panthers. You have McMillan alone on an island. Bryce Young the whole time in short. He's just looking at McMillan the entire time. Meanwhile, there's 3 guys outside. There's 1 corner, and I think it's a safety. So it's 3 on 2. If Bryce Young dumps it to Renfro, if he makes an adjustment at the line of scrimmage, gets the ball out quickly to one of those guys, you're talking about maybe a 20-yard gain. Instead, you turn the ball over and give it to the Cardinals on their side of the field. That is the stuff that costs games. And I know he had good fantasy points, and I know he put up great yards. And when the Cardinals defense just sat in the freaking zone and checked out completely, the defensive coordinator's in Old Town Scottsdale drinking a beer. They're like, where'd this guy go? Because clearly no one is calling the Cardinals defense. And when they check out, sure, he puts up great numbers. But if that's how you open the game, a fumble for a walk-in touchdown, and then that play, where I go, this is how coordinators are going to go after the Panthers now. This is the blueprint. This is the blueprint. You take away T-Mac and you blitz them. And the broadcaster said it, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But what did Bryce Young do down the stretch last year? Why was he good? He was good against the blitz. And good quarterbacks generally, like Pat Mahomes, I know the Chiefs are struggling right now, but a good quarterback, whoever that may be, usually what you do is you don't blitz them. Maybe you try to scheme something up and throw in the blitz, you sprinkle it in, but most of the time you're not blitzing them because they're going to destroy you when you blitz. Bryce Young, it's the opposite. You just blitz him and take away T-Mac, and he's a one-trick pony. And the Cardinals, for whatever reason, stopped blitzing the Panthers, and I need to see that from Bryce Young. Can he handle the blitz? And I will criticize the receivers too. I'll do that in a minute. But I am concerned about Bryce Young and his ability against the blitz. Everyone should be. And until he proves that he is good against it, we should take the stats and all that with a grain of salt. Not that we shouldn't be optimistic. Like, he did show that he has some rapport with Hunter Renfrow. JT Sanders, he was throwing these quick hitches, getting the ball out quick. He gets credit for that, but it's concerning that the Cardinals blitz him and it just falls apart. So here's Bryce Young. Actually, first we're going to go into this, because this quote, I was like, wow. And then we're going to go into Bryce Young. So this one's a little bit of a surprise for you. I'm just going to roll the clip. Here is Tetairoa McMillan talking about if the game has slowed down for him.
Yeah, I feel like the game has slowed down a little bit for me since the preseason. Just obviously getting my head around quicker just from that first game. That missed opportunity that me and Bryce had in the red zone.
I know the Panthers drafted him because of the attitude and they liked his character. You remember Dan Morgan sitting round table. I love the visual. I always bring it up, so I'm sorry if it's a cliche, but you have Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, Tepper, Brant Tillis at the table, and then Evero sitting at the kids' table in the corner. He had no input into the Panthers. Took with that 8th overall pick. But besides the point, in that Blueprint episode, they talk about how they were in love with the fact that McMillan was a team-oriented guy. I guess in the pre-draft meeting, or when they called him on the phone, and he goes, "I'm so grateful for the opportunity to play here." And they've been in love with this kid's attitude, and that's where we get to see it as a fan. Where he's reflecting on a play that happened in the preseason, is week 1 against the Browns. And he remembers it. I remember the play because I ripped him for it. It was a quick, I think it was like a slant, maybe a post in the red zone. And Young gets the ball. It's a nice throw. Great anticipation, but McMillan's head is just not whipped around. And I ripped the wide receiver for it. And he remembers that exact play. So that is a little bit of the competitive mindset on display for Tetairoa McMillan. He remembers that one slip up from the preseason. You should be ecstatic about this guy. He had a really good game again. He's going to grow every single week. He's going to be a true wide receiver 1. I'm very high on T-Mac. And I think he's a guy that has that killer instinct too. That intangible part to his game that we should all be excited about. Now we're going to go into the quarterback.
Yeah, credit to them. Great scheme, great players. So I won't take anything away from there. And just execution. There's some little stuff that we obviously want to do a better job at. That's part of the league. Don't want to make them into the disasters that we had on one. So. Can grow from that, and it's competitive league.
It's incredibly tough with Bryce Young to tell when he is taking accountability versus blaming other people, and I try to interpret it, and it's like an art form. I think there he is blaming himself a little bit. I think he's saying, I made some mistakes, I'm responsible, but I also think he's leaving the door open for, like, maybe the receivers aren't doing something, maybe the center communicating, the Austin Corbett when he was in there, maybe it was wrong. Because I think there were a bunch of issues, especially at the beginning of the game. There were opportunities for plays, both the turnovers. I think the fumble was more on him, but the interception itself too. Maybe one of the receivers needs to do something. Now again, his eyes were locked on McMillan the whole time. I said, he looked like Mark Sanchez. Or remember like Matt Ryan when he used to throw to Julio Jones? And Matt Ryan would just one look and just sit there and just wait for Julio. That is what it looked like, T-Mac and Bryce Young early in the game. Bryce Young just waiting for the wide receiver to do something, and that is what happened on that interception. Maybe there was an adjustment that was there. Maybe someone could have made a play, but I tend to blame the quarterback on that. I don't know if he takes ownership over that problem. If he doesn't, it concerns me. But I will say, I give the quarterback a pass. I think he doesn't have much help from his receivers outside of Renfrow in the short game. I think Renfrow 5 yards past the line of scrimmage is fine. The problem is when you try to throw it to him downfield, and he just, no matter where you throw the ball to Renfrow, like, it could be a good pass. If you're throwing it 20 yards down the field to Renfrow, he just like ends up like a flying squirrel. You throw the ball and he's just like jumping and he's like high in the air, but he's nowhere near the ball. And it looks like it's a good pass. It's like he's almost playing the ball poorly in the air. Maybe that's the issue. It's just he gets all acrobatic and it's like he's in the Matrix. Like, but if it's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, it's a quick out or a quick slant, he's fine. They don't have a second receiver besides T-Mac who Bryce Young is comfortable with throwing downfield. I think Sanders made some plays, but he's hit or miss. He had some big drops in the game. I think there was one play, I think it was a touchdown. They were going for a touchdown. Young threw it into the end zone and it went through Sanders' hands. It would have been a tough catch, but a good tight end, Tyler Warren, makes that catch. Good tight end makes that catch. They need another receiver because right now it's Bryson Tremaine. It's Bryson Tremaine. He is the other guy outside. They should have played David Moore. I want to see David Moore again, but who knows with him. Bryson Tremaine was okay, but they still don't have another receiver on the outside. And I think getting Coker back will help a ton, but Xavier Legette flat out cannot play. He cannot play. Obviously, we're all content with him not being a big play receiver down the field who's able to stretch the field. We're all content knowing that Legette won't be the guy that stretches the field. But they can't even throw it to him underneath. They can't even throw it to him on a screen pass. He runs east to west. He had 2 opportunities to make plays. He's running east to west, trying to beat guys to the sideline. There are plays to be had. I think if he tries to put his shoulder into a guy or run upfield, he's 230 pounds. I think he would have a lot better luck than trying to beat these players who are faster than him to the sideline. It's just not working. And the play that stuck out to me, I guarantee you no one will notice this play, but as insignificant as it was just like, wow. And this was on the 3rd drive of the second half. I think they came away with points on the drive. Might have been a touchdown. But there was this play, it was a hitch route by Legette. It's like 9-yard hitch, 9 or 10-yard hitch. Legette is open. So he's barely open. Like there's a defender there. Bryce Young, is going to have to make a pretty hard, fast throw. And he's going to have to trust Legette to come back to the ball too. Because it wasn't against Bryce Young's body, but the distance the ball would have had to go, the corner could have made a play pretty easily, is what I'm saying. On that play, Young just throws in the dirt. He just threw it in the dirt. And I'm like, if that was T-Mac, he would have threw the ball. If that was Coker, he would have threw the ball. He doesn't even trust Legette on these simple routes. The quarterback doesn't trust him at all. And for that to be your wide receiver too, that to be the guy who's supposed to be Bryce Young's second target, you need something else. You need something else. And I know Thielen's gone. I know Coker's injured. I get it. But Legette cannot play. That just had, I am out. Bryce Young walked out the door on Xavier Legette on that play. And I think a lot of people internally are. He had 8 targets, 1 catch for -2 yards. Running east to west. Things that are supposed to be his strengths are his weaknesses. Like, he's supposed to be the guy you throw the screen pass to, and he bullies the linebacker. He's bigger than the safety. It's like Derrick Henry at wide receiver. And he's running east to west and going out of bounds and falling over his feet. It was not a good game for Xavier Legette. I don't know how they play him the same amount of snaps next week. I think you have to be talking about replacement plans for him because Young doesn't have confidence in him, and I don't think he's helping your team that much. Here is a final Bryce Young quote. So Bryce Young talking about the play calling.
Whatever play is called, it's the best call in the world. So nothing long-term, nothing in the past, just want to execute that next play.
So coach versus quarterback. It's a weird comment there. It's sort of like when you've given up hope and you're like, oh, it was the best in the world. You hate the play call. It was the best one in the world. I have to do something better. and you don't really know what's wrong. Like, that's what that quote says to me from Bryce Young. He doesn't really know what's wrong. The coach thinks this is the problem.
It's the turnovers.
And he's sort of like, well, maybe it's the play call coming in. And again, going back to the blitzes, going back to Young's problems early on Sunday, that's a little bit of insight. Maybe who knows? It's an instinct or it's something. There's still a problem that needs mending there. He needs coaching, because that's a little bit of a passive-aggressive dig at the coach, for sure. For sure. I do want to touch on this really quickly, and then we're going to go into a couple last takes before I end the program. A lot of people might think I'm going to go and blame Bryce Young for the final drive. The final drive where Bryce Young did not complete a pass. He was 0 for 5. The Panthers, in grand fashion, lost to the Arizona Cardinals. Calais Campbell, all 39 years of Calais Campbell, culminated with a sack on the Panthers quarterback. And many might think I'm going to blame Bryce Young for what happened. They could have come away with a score. I think the Cardinals pretty much handed you that game. They got penalized 3 times on the final drive. They got penalized 3 times on the final drive. Like I've talked about all program, the defensive coordinator was completely checked out, and you didn't come away with points. I think the only thing Young really did wrong on that drive was the intentional grounding call. Hubbard was open. He had about 30 yards of space. Instead, I think Young was locked on McMillan again, and he threw the ball like in the vicinity of someone, but no one was there, got hit with grounding. Hubbard was open on the other side of the field with no one within 30 yards of him. And I think if Young turned back, looked at him, and checked it down, it would have been a game-changing play. You're talking about maybe winning the game. However, that's one misplay. I'm not going to knock Young too much for that. I think the story on the last drive was the story that's going to probably be the most important one this week, which is the offensive line's falling apart. Robert Hunt, Austin Corbett, both banged up, both getting MRIs. Who knows what happens to them? And even Ekwonu and Moten slowed down late in the game. Ekwonu got beat on a play that it ultimately got called back, but it was that fumble. So there was a penalty by the Cardinals. I think it was a holding down the field on Tetairoa McMillan. The corner was holding the Panthers wide receiver. It got called back. That penalty cleared what would have resulted in a game-ending fumble by the Panthers quarterback. And then Taylor Moton with the big one at the end. He got passed by Calais Campbell, who ended the game with a sack. And Chandler Zavala, he got called for a holding on what would have been Bryce Young's only completion of the drive to Chuba Hubbard, which resulted in a first down. Got called back because Chandler Zavala was holding. So the offensive line had 3 big mistakes down the stretch. 3 big mistakes on that final drive. I'm not making excuses for the quarterback, but, the offensive line has to be better in that situation. Sure, you can say Bryce Young lost the game in the first half, and I would agree with you, but that was the story on the last drive. I'm not just going to throw the quarterback under the bus. The offensive line fell apart, and they had a really good game for the most part. The Panthers' O-line played pretty well for the most part until that final drive where it all fell apart. And here is Bryce Young one more time. He gets a question at the very end of his press conference. I think it's Joe Person asking Bryce Young if he thought he would be benched.
Do you feel like you were fighting for your job, or
I'm playing the next play. That's all I care about.
So he clearly is pretty offended by the question. But I wanted to include it because this is how things improved. A tale of two halves. They improved for the Panthers quarterback. You could have been talking about benching the quarterback, a similar situation to last year, and he was resilient and he bounced back. And I do take the game with a grain of salt. I think the Cardinals almost lost that game. It's more about the Cardinals than Young, but he bounced back. And you have to give him credit where credit's due. And at least going into week 3, there is some confidence. There were things of improvement. I don't want to sit here and tell you that it's all fixed. Like, there's still a lot of work to be done, but at the least, Bryce Young did enough for us to be confident that he's improving. I think the defense played very well. Only gave up 20 points. Down the stretch, I think the defense won you the game or did more to put you in a position to win the game than Bryce Young. In the fourth quarter, so there were 2 drives. The Cardinals technically had 3 because they kneeled the ball at the end, but 2 drives in the fourth quarter. One was an interception. Pat Jones, I think, got pressure, and DJ Wanham came away with the pick. And then the second drive was a 3-and-out. And on the second down of that drive, Pat Jones stopped James Conner for a 3-yard loss. And on third down, there was great pressure on Kyler Murray, who was forced to throw it downfield into the dirt. Defense played well down the stretch. They played well down the stretch. Still think there are a lot of problems at inside linebacker. Nick Scott wasn't as bad as he was against Jacksonville at first glance. You still have a lot of holes. Like, Morig is doing literally everything. Trevon Morig is playing inside linebacker. He's playing in the nickel. He's playing free safety. He's playing back. He's covering Marvin Harrison Jr. He's covering Trey McBride. He's put in the box. He has to go and tackle James Conner between the tackles. Like, he's doing everything. He's doing everything. Trevon Morig is literally doing everything on this defense, and that does concern me. And the bright side is you have Lathan Ransom getting more play now, but it's because you have Trevon Morig playing in the box, or Trevon Morig playing in the corner, which means someone else is off the field. Like, you don't trust one of the corners, so you put Lathan Ransom in, and Morig is having to fill in the void for one of the corners that should be on the field. That concerns me. That's annoying. And I think it's a problem that could have been fixed and prevented very easily. You could have brought in Julian Blackmon. Could have signed a corner. Could have signed Jermaine Pratt. I said it a million times. But by and large, the defense improved. Bryce Young improved. Let's go get a win in week 3. Stay tuned to The Tone. It's been an amazing program. And we're going to come back with so much more later this week. This is The Tone.